how many snaps did they run in the 14 personnel?
That's only for us.
100% of the snaps.
And we are back. Welcome to 14P Fantasy, everyone. My name is Preston, and today we'll be taking a closer look at some ADP traps we want to avoid in best ball tournaments. But real quick, before we get started, if you haven't already hit that subscribe button below, please feel free to do so. Helps us out, helps us to keep bringing you all content. But with that said, let's go ahead and dive on in to some ADPs we want to fade in current best ball tournaments. And these ADPs that we'll specifically be discussing have currently been inflated, and they're still on the rise as we speak due to all of the chaos and mayhem from free agency, from trades, from whatever it is going on around the league, whether it's Tom Brady, whether it's James Conner, whether it's the Broncos wide receivers, whomever it may be. All of these players are currently experiencing a pretty drastic shift in ADP. And because of that, we want to avoid them in current open tournaments like the Big Board Superflex on Underdog. And what I mean by open tournaments is I mean tournaments that have been open for a little bit, in the sense that players had the chance to draft these NFL players before all of the news broke, before trades like Russell Wilson to Denver happened, before Chase Edmonds left Arizona, and so on and so forth. Because with that, these other teams in the same tournament that you're currently drafting in had the opportunity to take advantage of much, much better values than you're currently buying into at a player's ADP, even if the ADP rise is justified just on a macro in a vacuum sense for the player's current ADP. You know, currently we have Tom Brady, who at the start of the tournament was retired. So people were drafting him in the 20th round. Now that he's unretired in the same exact tournament, players are drafting him in the 3rd round. And why is this important? Because after all, in a typical, the tip for the first 14 weeks at least, you're going up against the 11 other players you drafted against. So it makes sense because in that realm, you're the only player, or you're the only team at least that was able to draft that player. You're the only team that was able to draft Tom Brady in that group of 12 at least, right? But after that, we have hopes to move on to the playoffs in the best ball tournament. And when that happens, we're going to be going up against other teams that had the opportunity to draft Brady in the 20th round. And I'll kind of give you an example as to how that works at a disadvantage to your team if you're the one drafting Brady right now in the 3rd round. For instance, if we have Team A who starts their draft out and drafts, Brady in the 3rd, or sorry, if Team A starts out and drafts Javonte Williams in the 3rd round, and then Tua in the 4th round, and Brady in the 20th round, and Team B that's drafting now drafts Brady in the 3rd round, Tua in the 4th round still, and now they're left with picking Bryan Edwards or whoever else in the 20th round. Essentially, the QB rooms could be exactly the same for both teams. They could have the same lineup of QBs, Brady, Tua, maybe they took Lamar in the 1st, but the big difference between these two teams is that because Team A was able to draft Brady in the 20th round, they essentially get someone like Javonte Williams or Najee Harris in the 3rd round, whereas Team B never had access to that. They're left with whatever 20th round pick they have, whether it's, some rookie dart throw running back, Bryan Edwards, whoever else. And that puts you at a massive disadvantage to that team if you're facing off against them in the playoff rounds. And so this is kind of an overall evergreen sort of strategy in the sense, because these sort of ADP drastic shifts and rises occur all throughout the offseason. A lot will occur around the NFL draft as more trades take place, as injuries happen. And I'll kind of give you an example of one that happened last year, and that was with Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers. Henderson was being drafted last offseason around the 11th or 12th round. Then the Akers injury news broke that Akers would presumably be out for the rest of the season. And in that, Henderson's ADP shot all the way up to the 4th or 5th round. Now, the debate isn't about whether or not Henderson could have paid off that ADP, whether his ADP was worth it or not, whether he was a value there, whether he was too high. Like, that's a conversation for a different day. The main issue, though, is that if you're in a current best ball tournament and another team was able to draft Henderson in the 11th or 12th round, you're putting yourself at that same disadvantage by drafting him in the 4th or 5th round, because the opportunity cost that you're giving up is putting your team at a disadvantage come playoff times. And so, other players like this currently that we want to avoid because of their ADP rises are players like, Juju Smith-Schuster, who already was on the rise going to Kansas City, playing with Patrick Mahomes, being in that high-tempo elite offense. But now that Tyreek has left, gone to Miami, Juju's certainly on the rise, even higher. We probably want to avoid James Conner and his rising ADP. He's getting paid lead running back money. Chase Edmonds left, so now Conner is presumably on the rise as well. And most certainly the Denver receiving core between, Judy Sutton and even Albert O, all these guys on the rise one way or the other because of the Russell Wilson trade. And so, regardless if you think they're justified at their current ADP, just don't buy into them right now. Almost certainly someone like Leonard Fournette, I think even his closing ADP at the end of this tournament will be a great value still relative to how he can outperform his ADP. But at the end of the day, getting him in the 4th round doesn't mean much, and it really overall hurts your team when other teams were able to draft him in the 7th, 8th, 9th round in the same exact tournament. So, keep the strategy in mind as you go forward, not to buy into these massive ADP rises. If you want to draft Brady, James Conner, the Denver wide receivers, whoever, then just wait for the next tournament. It's as simple as that. Just don't buy into it in the current tournament where players were able to get these other players at a massive discount compared to what you're getting at. And, overall, I think one thing we can kind of do in this time period, though, is to take advantage of some ADP fallers at least. If we want to find some other sort of edge as we're fading these ADP risers, look for the fallers. And, a good one in this circumstance may be someone like, I would say, we can look for Amon-Ra Brown if he somehow starts to fall down a little bit with DJ Chark being signed to Detroit. If people start to fade Amon-Ra Brown, he comes to a more reasonable range. He could be a good person to target. Another player that I probably will be targeting after they fall some more will be Jalen Waddle. If he gets to kind of around that 5th round range, I'll certainly be going back to the well and targeting Jalen Waddle. So, as these news breaks, we'll have risers, but we'll also have fallers. And it's important to go and take advantage of the fallers and avoid the risers at all costs. So with that said, that'll do it for us over here at 14P this time. As always, I'm Preston. See you guys next time.
How many snaps did they run in the 14 personnel?
That's only for us.
100% of the snaps.